You're listening to the Archaeology Podcast Network.
Stone Age Cannibals, examining the 7,000-year-old ritual site of Herxheim. Welcome back everyone to another episode of Archaeological Context. In this installment we focus on the Stone Age site of Herxheim, which is located in western Germany and was discovered in 1996. It is counted among the most important and at the same time enigmatic prehistoric localities of Europe, because in the ditches surrounding an early Neolithic settlement, the skeletal remains of hundreds of individuals were found. But these were not proper burials, as the bones were smashed beyond recognition and the skulls shaped to bowl-like artifacts. Soon after this discovery, the possibility of ritualized mass cannibalism was debated, as all the evidence hints to complex ceremonies taking place at this site. To find out more about what may actually took place at this site, I had a discussion with my friend Dr Andrea Zeeb-Lanz. She is leading the Herxheim research project, and here's already a small extract of our conversation.
Every other proof, for example, Bruno Balestin says it's proved factually that there was cannibalism, mass cannibalism in Herxheim, and that is not true because we don't have any factual truths. We know they cut off the meat from these persons. We don't know why they did it, and we don't know what happened to this meat.
Before we enter the debate around potential cannibalism, let me give you a quick overview about this archaeological site. Traces of multiple settlements belonging to the linear pottery culture were discovered during construction work in the village of Herxheim, located in western Germany, some 60 kilometers or 35 miles northwest of the city of Stuttgart. The so-called linear pottery culture, often referred to simply as LBK from its German name Linearbandkeramik, is named after its typical pottery decoration with band patterns, meaning spiral or angular lines winding around the ceramic vessels. The Neolithic settlement at Herxheim covers an area of about 4 hectares and was inhabited by an estimated 100 people per generation from around 5,300 to 4,950 BCE. And initially, the archaeologists did not expect any great surprises when the excavation of the site was started in 1996. As known from other linear pottery culture settlements, 2 parallel ditches surrounded the village. However, over the course of the excavation, the finds in these ditches proved to be so spectacular that more intensive research seemed necessary. And since 2004, a team of dozens of interdisciplinary researchers examined the site, with large-scale excavations following between 2005 and 2008. But now to the reason why Herxheim has become such an enigmatic site for prehistoric Europe. As mentioned in the introduction, during these excavations, human remains of at least 500 individuals were detected, and it is suggested that the total number could be even around 1,000 people buried in the ditches surrounding this LBK settlement. But as these bones were commingled and smashed beyond recognition, it was evident that they do not represent proper burials. The distribution of the bones and other objects rather indicated that they were simply dumped into the trenches and then covered with soil. These human remains found in the ditches show numerous traces of specific cuts consistent with the butchering or processing of meat. For example, cuts at joint ends and at attachment points for muscles and tendons on the long bones. Specific cuts on the skull even indicate the stripping of the entire scalp. Further traces like short scraping marks on long bones and other body parts suggest a careful removing of the flesh from these bones. These findings sparked heated debates among experts, with one theory being the possibility of cannibalism. To get to the bottom of the mystery of what this site really represents, a team of archaeologists and anthropologists meticulously studied the bones. Their analysis involved a combination of traditional osteological methods as well as stable isotope analysis and ancient DNA sequencing. And to focus on one example, the strontium isotope analysis from human teeth yielded very interesting results. From almost 100 sampled individuals, about 90 proved to be from, quote, strangers, meaning they were not born or raised in the area surrounding Herxheim. Because, as we covered more extensively in the last season of this podcast, isotopes are absorbed into the body with the food the individuals consumed, and isotopes have a very characteristic ratio depending on the landscape one has lived. This analysis additionally revealed high strontium contents in the vast majority of the samples, indicating that these individuals, who originated from further away, apparently grew up in low mountain ranges. This fact led the researchers to even more open questions, which we will later discuss with the guest of today's podcast. However, the highly standardized and repetitive treatment of the individuals processed at Herxheim, meaning the dismemberment of the bodies, fleshing of the skeletons, systematic crushing of the bones, or shaping of the skulls into bowl-like artifact, places the activities at this site in the realm of highly ritualized acts. Further evidence for complex rituals taking place at Herxheim are indicated by the other objects that were found in the trenches. All valuable items such as special flint, millstones, and pottery objects. And like the human bones, these objects have been systematically destroyed. Focusing on the ceramics, the pottery shards discovered in the ditches next to the human remains indicated to represent at least 8 different regional styles of late linear pottery cultures, dating to around 5000 to 4900 BCE. This means that the decorations and shapes of some vessels indicate an origin from as far away as 500 kilometers from Herxheim. And indeed, clay analysis revealed that the vessels decorated in foreign regional styles were not made of local clay found around Herxheim. This indicates a far-flung exchange network, and it was suggested that the settlement communities integrated in this network probably sent delegations to communal ritual activities taking place at Herxheim, and also brought vessels in their native decoration style. And so, as the stable isotope analysis and the pottery shards indicated the presence of individuals from various distant places, this raised new questions about the nature of Herxheim and its role in the broader Neolithic society. Was it a trading center, a pilgrimage site, or something else entirely? As the evidence continued to unfold, some experts revisited the possibility of ritual cannibalism taking place at Herxheim. Ritual cannibalism has been documented in various cultures throughout history, often associated with complex beliefs, where bones could have been ritually processed and deposited as part of communal practices. However, the fact that the bones were cut into very small pieces and the skulls taken apart in a certain way could speak rather against cannibalism and more to so-called ritualized destruction. In summary, Herxheim appears to stand alone and without comparison in the early Neolithic or linear pottery culture world, given the sheer number and extreme manipulations of remains of around 1,000 individuals. As many questions surrounding the finds of this 7,000-year-old site remain open, I am very happy to discuss some of them with today's guest, Dr. Andrea Zeeb-Lanz. Okay, Andrea, thank you very much for joining us. First off, do you think the human bones and other destroyed artifacts discovered in Herxheim represent one large ritual event that took place? So a singular event, or rather multiple events taking place over a longer period of time, maybe some decades or even centuries?
I'm definitely sure that it is not only one event, because you have to imagine we are talking about around 1,000 persons which were somehow brought to death, and then they were cut up into pieces and they were processed very carefully, and the meat was cut off, and then the bones of most of these individuals were smashed into small pieces, and the heads were processed so that only the calottes, like a sort of artificial object like a bowl, remained. And it's not really imaginable how this could happen in one session, you could say, in one ceremony or a ritual meeting. It would take, I don't know, weeks or months to do it. So we are pretty sure that several events took place, and we have concentrations of bone material and of pottery which are overlapping, sort of. So you have no chance by doing C14 or so to decide whether there is a big amount of time between these two episodes where two of these concentrations are overlapping. It could be weeks, it could be months, it could be some years. We know that definitely decades are not a question, because we have the pottery, which really is very well researched in the LBK, and we can date it to a small period of about 50 years at the end of the 6th century, maybe 60 years, maybe 40, but it's not definitely longer. That is very well researched, and we are sure of that. So we have a sort of dating by the pottery. It's the end of the LBK, the end of the 6th millennium. But it could have taken some years. So you could have 10 ritual meetings, you could have 5 or 20. I think it's something between 10 or 20 if you think of 1,000 persons which have to be processed like that. So, but we can't really say for sure. I'm really waiting for natural scientific methods, you know, that we could do some sort of tree ring dating with human bone material or with our other organic material. I'm sure something like that will come, but I have no idea when. So we have to wait for new developments in the natural sciences, I think, to really answer this question. At the moment, we can say it's not longer than 50 years. Probably it took place several times, but not in one event.
Okay, thank you. And speaking about the human remains, I was wondering, do we actually know something about the cause of death of these individuals deposited in the ditches? So if and how they were killed, or were they, for example, already dead from diseases prior to being ritually processed at the site?
I start with the first part of your question. We have a number of traumata on the skull caps, which we have, but these traumata are all healed. You can see it very well. At least some months or even years. We have some blows with stone adzes, and some blunt instruments or weapons were used, and that is something which is not so astonishing. We have it in LBK graves as well, that people, you know, have cuts on the head or so, or blows, signs of blows on the heads. So there is some violence, some aggression, as it is in every society, since people lived in smaller or bigger groups. We have to admit that. So these blows on the head are not the causes of death, and the remains, the rest of the skeleton, the postcranial skeleton, is normally, you have to imagine that, cut into small pieces from 4 to 6 centimeters long. So you can never say, if you have a broken rib, for example, or a smashed tibia or so, you can never say this is a blow from violence to kill this person, or this is the blow because all the bones were cut into small pieces. So the cause of death, we have no idea about that. the question of a disease where, lots of people died. How Bruno Bolestin, our anthropologist, wrote in his publication, I found that very good. He said, we have to give these people some kind of, how to say, in German we say Menschenverstand, just normal thinking. When they see that people, fall like flies and die like flies, 20 of them, 50, 30, or 100 of them, they would never, occupy themselves. And for such a long time, they would know that is something which is not good. Everybody's dying. So we better put them into grave as quickly as possible, away with them. So, but they really take time to occupy themselves with cutting up these people, with taking off the flesh, and they wouldn't do that if this was really a disease. So I think we can exclude a disease. Actually, I would do that. I can't, as I can. Nobody can really say whether it was a disease or not, but there are many good reasons against this case. So I think they were brought to death somehow. If you take a knife and give them put it into their heart or so, you will never see it on the bones. Even if you have a cut mark on a rib or on the sternum or so, it could always come from cutting them up or taking off the flesh. Yeah. We can't differentiate that.
Okay. It's impossible. Yeah. And maybe so the isotope analysis revealed that a larger part of these individuals probably grew up in low mountain ranges. What does this signify for you, or why was this fact actually so remarkable?
It was not only remarkable, it was so astonishing that we just repeated the first isotope analyses because we thought there was a mistake in the laboratory or so. And it turned out that these isotope analyses were really on the point. The second time on the same tools, we had the same results. Mm-hmm. But the LBK is one of the best researched culture in the prehistory of Europe. And we have thousands of excavated sites and hundreds of cemeteries, but we have found until now no traces of really settlement activity in the low mountain ranges, which I can understand very well because these are farmers. They need, plains for growing cereals, growing crops and other vegetables, whatever they need, pasture for their cows and so on. So it wouldn't be feasible to go into the mountains because we have really isotope data which show that these are the higher parts even of low mountain ranges. So where, you have really mountainous areas where you can't really settle for farming. And as we actually don't have traces of normal LBK people in the mountains, these are not normal LBK people, although these persons which were born and grew up in the lower mountain ranges, they have the DNA, the typical haplogroups of LBK people. We have made so many analyses we can compare it. We have no Mesolithic people, so these are not the last Mesolithics who were, just taken prisoner and you can kill and process them. It's a mystery, actually. We don't know the identity of these large groups of people because if you imagine, even in grown-ups, we measure the values of their birth and their first years of living. So they lived in the mountains, but just born baby doesn't live alone in the mountains. It would never survive. So we have parents. So this group is much bigger than just these 900 or 1,000 persons which we are talking about. Yeah. And that's so astonishing because we have no traces up till now. Although naturally it's much more difficult to really find traces in the mountainous areas because nobody is building. They don't have many excavation activity, not really any research in the mountainous areas. But if there were larger settlements of some sort, we would have found something. Now I'm rather sure. So at the moment we have a community or many communities, several communities who obviously lived in the mountains, but we don't really know what they did there, who they are. They have ancestors which are the same of the normal LBK people in the plains, but they are not visible archaeologically.
Hopefully in the future, we will discover some sites from them. Yes.
We have so many enigmas, at Herxheim which have to be solved. Some of them will never be solved. We will never know why they came. They had this idea without any tradition for these rituals or so. You would have to interview some of them, but that won't be possible naturally. But I think the identity of the dead, for example, or the time span when this took place, all these questions, and there are quite a number of further questions, I hope they will be solved in the future. So it always stays interesting in Herxheim. We never can say we can close the book. That was the last chapter, and now we know everything.
Yeah, maybe staying with that. Finally, one question concerning the debate around this possibility of mass ritualized mass cannibalism. I'm not familiar with this topic at all, so I was just wondering, is there actually any way, like any type of analysis for us to find out if human flesh was consumed?
Yeah, there is one real factual possibility, that is if you have coprolites. In coprolites, there's a certain enzyme, or I don't know the English word, it's a certain stuff that is only in the muscular flesh of humans. Cows also have it, or pigs or so, but it is different. So you can really analyze and say, this person who produced this coprolite has eaten human flesh. But we never have coprolites in mineral. Yeah, in mineral site. That's the problem. We never have LBK coprolites, and we don't have any in Herxheim. Every other proof, for example, Bruno Balestin says it's proved factually that there was cannibalism, mass cannibalism in Herxheim, and that is not true because we don't have any factual truths. We know they cut off the meat from these persons. We don't know why they did it, and we don't know what happened to this meat. And it's masses of meat. I mean, if you say we had this ritual 10 times or 15 times, so you're talking for one ritual of 100. Really took pains to find out how many eatable material 100 persons give you, so grown-ups and children, made sort of an average calculation there. And from 100 persons, you get more than 3,500 kilo of meat and 1,500 kilo of fat. And I'm not talking about the innards and stuff like that. So who should eat that all? Because they don't really have methods to, conserve it over a long time. Yeah. So it would have to be eaten in a very short time. And that would mean that the whole LBK community from Europe must have come to these ceremonies to eat these masses of meat. And then Bruno says they even gnawed on the small bones of the fingers, as a sort of after dish or whatever, to get out the what's called, the material inside the bones, which
the bone marrow as
well. The bone marrow, yes. Yeah. And because we have these sort of destroyed ends, the epiphyses of the phalanges, and they are destroyed a bit. But you have many reasons to destroy these. I asked quite a number of anthropologists, and they said, well, that just happens because it's just spongy material, and that gets destroyed by itself. So it's no proof that anybody tried, after eating 3,500 kilo of meat, still tries to get the marrow out of the small bones from the fingers. For me, it's sort of ridiculous to assume this. And we don't have a real proof for the hypothesis of cannibalism, but it stays as one hypothesis which can't really be proved. I can't prove that it's just a ritual meeting where they had a feast where they ate meat, but from cattle or other animals, and maybe they dug holes, or in parts of these ditches the meat was deposited.
Yeah.
And at other places than the bones, this is possible, but we never tried to analyze the filling from the ditches. So we still have 1/3 of the ditch it's not yet touched by archaeologists, and there are many questions which we could say, okay, we can try these questions in the part of the site we still have in the earth.
I'm looking forward to the new discoveries around this site.
Yes, me too. And there's still quite a lot of material to be analyzed. For example, at the moment we are working, my colleague Eva Häusler, mainly together with me, is working on the pottery to find out whether all these different regional styles, the pottery with these regional style ornamentation really came from Bohemia, from northern Hesse and other places. And that's something we really want to definitely find out in the next few months, and that will solve a number of questions. Who really took part in these ceremonies? Because we don't have the actors, we just have the victims, Maybe that we even have some of the actors, but that is not really, it's work in progress, actually. I'm working on the whole skeletons at the moment together with an anthropologist. We just have 12 whole skeletons. Some of them look like normal burials, but there are a number of interesting details on these skeletons as well. And that's what we're working on. Perhaps we even can, grab some of these actors who sort of died during the rituals and were buried there. But yeah, these are further things which have to be examined.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Thank you very much for these interesting insights, Andrea, around the site of Herxheim. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, and I'm happy that you choose me for a podcast interview.
Of course. All right, that's it for this episode. One could speak a lot longer or highlight many more interesting results from the research of such an enigmatic prehistoric site, but I hope you enjoyed this small insight into the 7,000-year-old ritual site of Herxheim. Thanks again to Dr. Andrea Zeeb-Lanz for giving us her interesting insights, and if you enjoyed it as well, please follow and subscribe to this podcast. You can even support it over on Patreon. I hope you will tune in about 2 weeks for another edition of Archaeological Context with Dr. Noah.
This has been a presentation of the Archaeology Podcast Network. Visit us on the web for show notes and other podcasts at www.archpodnet.com. Contact us at chris@archaeologypodcastnetwork.com.